Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. I hope right now those are watching this tutorial are doing great and having good health. Welcome to Fahad's tutorial. In this video, it's about the English version students, those who are right now studying biology book. You know that exchange of gases is one of your vital chapter of this book. Previously, you have studied about the cells, tissues, cell divisions, bioenergetics, and then transport in organism. So those who already studied about transport in organisms, you have some ideas about heart, blood vessels, bloods, and the functions of bloods and how this circulatory system is going on. So if you understand that system, now it's time to think about human respiratory system as well as about plants, exchange of gases. Though the title of this chapter is Exchange of Gases, mainly and primarily we need to know about human respiratory system. This is a vast knowledge here, but primarily and according to the syllabus, I'll definitely stick with the book that till which level I should explain. So students of A level and students of medical students, those who medical students, those who are studying right now this human respiratory system, if you ask them, this is something like a book, more than a book. Lots of things are there. Right now in this video, I shall explain a very little, a primary level about human respiratory system. That is why I draw a picture, very simple, and sort of like what are the parts of human respiratory system. Think about it. What should be the main part of this chapter is that gas exchange in plants. So from our previous knowledge, we know that respiration and photosynthesis. I am really sure that you must know these things. What is respiration and what is photosynthesis? The process of photosynthesis, what happens? Simply we can say that plants produce oxygen and glucose with the carbon dioxide and water is reactant. So the main thing for ourselves, like those are animals, are inhaling oxygen from air which is directly produced from the photosynthesis process. So in case of gas exchange in plants, we know that plants definitely take part in two different physiological process. Number one is photosynthesis and number two is respiration. Plants take oxygen in case of respiration, and definitely plants again reversibly produce oxygen in case of photosynthesis. So simply this is understandable. In photosynthesis process, oxygen is produced, also glucose is produced. If you see the reaction, I hope you know it, carbon dioxide and water is reacting. So 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 12 molecules of water primarily react in photosynthesis process to produce 1 molecule of glucose and 6 molecules of oxygen plus 6 molecules of water. So we, the animal, we need this carbon dioxide, this oxygen, which is actually coming from the plants directly from the photosynthesis process. So we know it. In case of gas exchange in plants, plants also take oxygen in respiration process. What's going on in respiration? If you know that this glucose which is producing in plants, as well as we need this glucose to survive, and that is why this glucose is being oxidized to produce again carbon dioxide, again water and energy. So you see that plants are giving us oxygen and we are giving them carbon dioxide. So in case of plants and animals, these exchanges is going on. In case of plants also, plants are taking oxygen in respiration process. So that is why the exchanges of gas is going on in plants and in between plants and animals. This is very simple and it's actually not the basic part of this chapter, though the title is exchange of gas, but mainly we need to focus on understanding human respiratory system. So what about human respiratory system? What are the organs connecting there? And you see the main content of this chapter. We need to know about human respiratory system, and then what is the process of breathing. That should be a different class, though it's a primary level, breathing, and then there are some disease of respiratory system. Like in this chapter, asthma, bronchitis, pneumonia, tuberculosis and lung cancer were discussed. I should try definitely to upload a different segmented class based on this topic. I mean, you see, these are the disease which is very common to us, and also we need to know a little bit about it. So I shall upload segmented videos on asthma, bronchitis, pneumonia, you know, about the disease causing agent, because pneumonia is very well known, pneumococci. And in case of tuberculosis, you know that Mycobacterium tuberculosis is the causing agent for this. And definitely all disease are related with respiratory system. So this is the main content of this chapter. Now think about human respiratory system. What are the parts of human respiratory system, and what is inside, deep inside? Think about it. Human respiratory system based on some sort of known things like nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchus, lung and diaphragm primarily, okay? And this has some sequences of this day has some sequences. See this picture. I hope you know already that this picture is all about the human respiratory system. And you see, the first part of human respiratory system is we have nose and nostrils. So these nostrils is the opening, is the first opening which is situated just above of buccal cavity. We know that we have a buccal cavity, and then just before that we have nostrils. So two nostrils. If you see closely, then it will look like these from upward. So it's a triangular hollow, triangular. You see our nose, we have a two, bifurcated part which is segmented by a cartilaginous septum. This is called vertical cartilaginous septum, and this is vertical. So inside, this is nostrils. So nostrils, and then after, this is the cavity. This is the cavity where we call it nasal cavity. So this is bifurcated or separated by a septum. Septum means the separations between things. So the septum, by the vertical cartilaginous septum, it is bifurcated or separated. So this is the nasal cavity. So from the nostrils we have nasal cavity inside, and then after, from the nasal cavity, this part is known as pharynx. Okay. What about pharynx? Pharynx is an extended space from the nasal cavity to the upper part of the larynx. So this part is known as larynx. So in larynx we have different folds which is known as vocal cord. So in larynx we have vocal cord which generate sounds. We are talking because of the vibrations of vocal cord. We know that sounds produce from the vibrations. So that we are talking and we are producing sound, and that production of sounds because of the vibrations of vocal cord. And then inside larynx there is when we can see our pharynx from, if you open our mouth, I can see that there is a soft palate. And inside the soft palate, this soft palate might have a link between this development of soft palate and the evolution of human oral system. This is very important. So in larynx, which is the next part of the pharynx, because we know it started from the nostrils, and then we have a nasal cavity, and then the extended part from the nasal cavity to the larynx is the pharynx. So inside pharynx, we know that there is a soft palate part and there is a mucous membrane. One thing I just forget to mention, our nose is spatially made because we have hairs inside, and also inside we have cilia and mucus producing membrane. This is very important because when we inhale air, there might be some dust or some other foreign particles which might have some harmful effects to our health. So that is stick with the mucous membrane and then stuck in nasal cavity. That is do not go directly to the lungs. So that is why it is important. And same way in larynx we have vocal cord, and also we have epiglottis. We have epiglottis. What is epiglottis? Epiglottis is a flap of soft muscle which is actually working as a lead. I mean, we know that our trachea, which is conducting or connecting with our lungs, and then we have also esophagus. You know, the esophagus is the part of alimentary system or digestive system, or we know that this is actually an alimentary tube. So when we take food, the epiglottis is working as an eyelid. So when we take food, it opens this part, the esophageal part. So that is why the food particles directly can go to the stomach. So that is the stomach actually. So when we take food, if any food particles comes unwillingly with the trachea, then it creates problem. So epiglottis is a flap muscle, and that is working as a lead to prevent when we take food. You know that when we take food, definitely we must be careful. Otherwise, if any food particles unwillingly enters into the trachea, then it creates problem. So that is why we know that trachea is situated in front of the esophagus. That is why when we take food, in case of engulfing food, we cannot breathe. We cannot take the inhalation, because at that particular time when we are taking food and engulfing something, the process of respiration are being stopped because of this. So the epiglottis is working as a lead in front of the trachea, and then food particles are coming directly with the esophagus to stomach. Okay, so in larynx we have vocal cord, two folds are there, and this vibration produces sound, and the epiglottis is working as a lead to prevent the food particles entering to the trachea. Okay, and then the tube, or we say it windpipe. So this is known as trachea or windpipe. So this is actually trachea, or we say it windpipe. Why? Because it carries the wind, or it carries the air we are taking, we are inhaling. You know that inspiration and expiration. Inspiration and expiration. You must know it, that inspiration means inhalation. Taking air inside. So inspiration means inside, and expiration means, or exhalation means, going out. So inspiration is taking air, and the exhalation or expiration means leaving the air from our inside. So in case of inspiration, it works as a channel from directly to the nostrils, to nasopharynx, to the pharynx, to the larynx, and then trachea. What about this trachea? This trachea is like a pipe, just simply a pipe. And this trachea has this C-shaped cartilages, which is about more than 50 to 20 C-shaped cartilage is being covered by this trachea. And then when this trachea is segmented, then it creates the path to different lungs. We have two lungs, so when trachea is actually segmented and entering into different lungs, then it creates two channels, and this channel is known as bronchus. So the next part after trachea is bronchus. So trachea is known as a windpipe, and it has a cartilage, C-shaped cartilage, which is 50 to 20, and the diameter of trachea is 20 to 22 millimeter. The length is near about 10 to 12 inches. So 10 to 12 inches the length, and the diameter is 20 to 22 millimeter, and 15 to 20 C-shaped cartilages is actually surrounded in between the trachea. So this trachea is segmented and creates this pathway, because we have lungs, which is left lung, and we have right lungs. And most interestingly, when these two segment of the trachea is entering to different lungs respectively, this part of the lungs is known as hilum. So when it is entering, this is left lung, so you call it left bronchus, and it's called right bronchus, or you can say it bronchi. So that is why the bronchus are the part which is actually this one. So this is called the right bronchus, and this is left bronchus. And you know that when bronchus is entering to the lungs, it's again divided into some different branches, and these branches is known as bronchiole. These branches is known as bronchiole. So these are the branches known as bronchiole. So we call it bronchiole. This is called bronchiole. Okay. So there are a number of bronchioles, and most importantly, these bronchioles, after when it is again segmented, it's actually stuck with the small ball-like substance, and this is known about alveolus. This is known as alveolus. In plural form, you can say alveoli. So alveoli situated in the terminal part of the bronchioles. So simply, if we see the respiratory system, we have nostrils first, nasal cavity, and then nasopharynx, then larynx, trachea, right and left bronchus, and then bronchiole, and then alveoli. So when the part of trachea is entering into the lungs, we are naming it bronchi. Then after, we have the important respiratory organ, which is lung. So this is the lung, and you know that right lung and left lung has two different lobes. In right lung, it has three lobes. It has three lobes, 1, 2, and 3. But in left lung, it has two lobes. So the right lung has three lobes and left lung has two lobes. These lungs, we have two lungs, and these lungs is pink in color. Most importantly, the thing is that we need to remind that lungs is surrounded or covered by a double layered membrane. The double layered membrane. Suppose this is the left lung, and this is the right lung. And these lungs are covered by a double layer membrane, and this double layer membrane has the most important function. The outermost area, the outermost layer is known as parietal layer. Parietal layer, and the inner layer is known as visceral layer. And inside, in between two layers, we have cavity, and you know this double layer is known as pleura. So the coverings of lungs is known as pleura, and pleura is a double layer membrane. The outer layer is known as parietal, and the inner layer is known as visceral. And inside this layer there is a liquid, and this liquid is called serous fluid or fluid. Serous fluid. This serous fluid works as a lubricant, which is actually working as a suffering part, because every time before death our respiratory system or our respiration is working on. So we are inhaling and exhaling the air. So that is why when it's working, the membranes works as a lubricants, because it minimizes the frictions in between these two layers. That is why these functions of serous fluid is very important. So we have two lungs which is pink in color, and the lungs weight might be 600 to 700 grams around, and difference in age. So the left lung has two lobes, and the right lung has 3 lobes, and these lungs is covered by a double layer which is known as pleura. You must remember the thing that pleura is the covering of lungs. And then the outermost part is parietal layer, and the inner layer is visceral layer, and inside these layers we have a fluid which is known as serous fluid. And last but not least, we have another muscular separation sheet in between thoracic cavity and abdominal cavity. Do we know what is thoracic cavity and abdominal cavity? Suppose if we draw a human body, so in short, so if we have lungs here, so this is our brain, there is an open umbrella like muscular sheet which is known as diaphragm. So diaphragm is here. So this is like an open umbrella. If you just open an umbrella, then the part of umbrella just above your head is like this diaphragm. So this diaphragm is the separation in between the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity. We have abdomens because inside we have stomach, we have liver, we have pancreas, we have these intestines, the small intestines and large intestines. So these soft organs are situated under the diaphragm, and this part after the diaphragm, this is known as abdominal cavity. This is known as abdominal cavity. And the upper part, which is called the thorax, we have thoracic cavity, because this thorax contain the lungs, which is the most part of lungs, and it is actually covered by our ribs. And in front we have sternum, and in back side we have vertebral column. So lungs are actually preserved or maintained in front. We have in front sternum. We know that when we study about the skeletal system, in right side we have 12 ribs and left side 12 ribs. So we have 12 pairs of ribs which is connected in the back side of 12 thoracic vertebrae. So we have vertebral column in our backside, and we have sternum in front. So this is the anterior view. So you are seeing me from your anterior view. So we have a sternum in front, and in backside we have vertebral column. In between this space, it is mostly composed by the right and left lung, which is covered by a pleura. So in our thoracic cavity, we have thoracic cavity between two lungs, and then after, which is separated by the diaphragm. This is abdominal cavity. So we can simply say the diaphragm is a muscular organ, or like an open sheet, which is separated from the thoracic cavity to the abdominal cavity. So we are right now studying about the thoracic cavity. So what is the function of diaphragm, and what is the structure of diaphragm? It's again a huge explanation. If you ask any medical students about diaphragm, they can tell about more than 2 hours or even 3 hours about this organ. What is diaphragm? It has a lot of things, but primarily I'm just telling you the diaphragm, what is the function of it. It helps in breathing. When diaphragm contracts, you know that when we actually inhale, when we take air, our chest and our thoracic cavity, it's expanded. You know, when we actually, you know, that somebody when sleeping, if you see that the chest is becoming like that. So when it expands, it means that we are taking airs inside. So the diaphragm contracts, and it contracts, and then it lowers. Then the space or the volume of the thoracic cavity increase. So it means that oxygen or the air is coming. So it increase the thoracic cavity. That means the diaphragm is getting lower and it contracts. So when it expands, it's getting upwards, and the volume of thoracic cavity compressed, and then the air, I mean with carbon dioxide, is getting out from the respiratory tract. So when we are inhaling oxygen voluntarily, somehow you know that the thoracic cavity expand because of the diaphragm gets lower and it contracts. And when it's getting expanded, when diaphragm expanded, then it goes upward and it's squeezed. So that means the carbon dioxide is coming out from the respiratory tract. And this is simply the description about the diaphragm. So what you understood, this is a level 0.001 explanations about human respiratory system. This is nothing but students of English version right now, those are watching and who's studying biology very first, I mean the initial stage. Right now this lecture is based on your thinking, but you might know better than me, of course, and I will definitely explain these things again more deeply and with more explanations when things will come with HSC level biology. So if we wrap up the class about human respiratory system, this class is about the exchange of gas. So the title of the chapter is exchange of gas because it's about plants and animals. So plants are releasing oxygen and we are taking that oxygen for our energy productions and also to survive, because no animals can survive without oxygen. So we need oxygen. So through which process it's coming? We know that when we take food because of surviving, so we take food because inside our digestive system is working on, and the food particles are actually reacting with enzymes and chemicals and then segmented into smaller particles, and then it produces glucose, amino acids and fatty acid. So these amino acid, fatty acid and glucose is stored in the cells. So right now cells need oxygen. So that oxygen will be carried through the blood. So blood will take these oxygens from the lungs. So lungs will purify these. You know that blood circulatory system, heart pumps through the pulmonary artery the blood, which is deoxygenated blood, is coming into the lungs, and then when in alveolus, this is another lecture, the structure of alveolus. This is another lecture which is about HSC level biology. In alveolus, when oxygen enters and carbon dioxide getting out, this is called the diffusion process, which is going on inside alveolus. So when alveolus there is capillaries is going on. So if this is an alveolus, a ball shaped, and so where the capillaries is just going through with the blood here, then it gives oxygen and takes carbon dioxide. This exchange is going on, which is known as diffusion. So this diffusion process means that our lungs is taking carbon dioxide and giving oxygen. It actually will have, it's actually will be the reversible reactions, because the blood will take the blood will be oxygenated from the lungs, and then lungs will take the carbon dioxide to exhale for the expiration. So what's going on inside? When blood takes the oxygen, it reaches to the cell to respiration process, and that respiration means that oxygen will work with or oxidize the food particles like glucose and oxygen, and then it produces energy and it gives us warmth, and that is why we're living and we're surviving. So we have these in our body, we have these. So students, right now you see that through these nostrils, then nasopharynx, and then larynx, you know that from the part of the nasal cavity, the extended part is known as pharynx, and in this pharynx we have soft palate. In larynx we have vocal cord, for the vibration we are talking, I'm talking right now and you are hearing, and then this is epiglottis, which is working as the lead. When you take food, then it will help to accept by the esophagus, not by the trachea. So you know that two tubes are there. So in front of that, like this one is trachea, and then after we have epiglottis. So epiglottis will go directly to the stomach, and the trachea will go to the lungs. So we want air should go to the lungs, not the food particles. So if food particles will go to the lungs, then something will different happens. So this is trachea, or known as windpipe. It has two different parts, which is left bronchus, right bronchus, right bronchus, left bronchus. Right bronchus will enter into the right lung. It has three lobes and it has two lobes. So when it getting segmented, it's called bronchiole, and then after it has a ball-like particles, which is known as alveolus. So simply we said that we have two lungs, and these lungs is covered by the membrane, which is known as pleura, and pleura has double layer. The outer layer is known as parietal layer, inner layer is known as visceral layer. In between these two layers we have serous fluid, which is acting as a lubricant to minimize the friction when continuously the lungs is expanding and contracting, because we're taking every time this inspiration and expiration. So exhalation and inhalation is going on. So in the next video I shall explain about breathing, how it happens. In this video my primary focus was to explain primarily the human respiratory system. I wish those who are watching right now, if you can understand, please let me know, or if you have any recommendations after this tutorial, please give me the recommendations in the comment sections. And I request you all to draw this figure, to write down, to labeling these figures, because it's not only for answering the questions paper in the exam hall, or the more about to know the process completely and without any errors. If I have any errors in my entire videos, please give me the feedback, and I shall definitely try to adjust in the next tutorial. So see you on the next video about breathing. Take care, stay well.